There are two pieces in AI which are important. One is the actual AI skill of how do you model, how do you query, how do you build new models, how do you train models. And the second is security, which goes with it, data security. These two skills are the most important skills. And every organization, every company I go and speak to, every institution, government, skill is what they're looking for.
We are very much driven by the idea of resource efficiency, also because we have less data. And we focus on small to medium-sized models because we know they're just more practical to deploy, they're more practical to manage.
Hello and welcome to this episode of ITWeb TV on the road. We are today coming to you from the Microsoft AI tour in Sandton. We're going to be joined by a range of guests from Microsoft themselves through to Lelapa AI, which is adopting an African language model. It's going to be very interesting. Please stay tuned. So with me now is Ravi Bhat, who is the CTO for Microsoft Africa. Ravi, nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
We're going to talk briefly about, obviously this being the AI tour for Microsoft, we're going to talk briefly around AI, some of the kind of more, how things are evolving slightly. And then tell me, what's the kind of Microsoft take on small language models? We've also got the kind of large language models, which, you know, is what's kind of probably the most famous kind of thing in the public consciousness. But as I understand it, small language models are going to start becoming more popular. What's the Microsoft kind of outlook for those?
So I think the language models, again, is also an evolution. We started with large language models because we wanted big data to be actually queried, and therefore we wanted all the answers. It requires a lot of firepower. It requires a lot of GPUs and everything in order for you to come through all of that. So the more we are realizing, whether it is a language in a country, whether it is a model for a particular culture, the small language models are better suited in that scenario. You saw some of the demos of the large language, small language models today as to how it is less consuming or less power, less CPU, but you're still getting the same scenario. We saw some of the demos in an airplane mode, which is disconnected from tires. And those can also use small language models. We are doing a lot of work across Africa and Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, Morocco, in different languages. And those small language are much more efficient when you interact with them, given the same AI capability, but the model is smaller and it's much more efficient and more local, regional, and therefore actually gives what exactly that country, that group of individuals or culture needs. So we are encouraging lots of these models. Of course, we have our large language models, but we are incorporating any of these modeling and tuning in Microsoft Stack.
So as enterprises start adopting their own kind of language models internally, I'm guessing there's a kind of foundational model that they'll kind of build these on, and then they'll kind of put their own data on top of that, I'm assuming. Then the enterprise's own AI learns from that data, but that data is kind of private within the organization.
The models generally organizations will adapt.
Okay.
So you take any of the large enterprises in South Africa or globally, they will adapt the models which they believe are most suited to their industry and their enterprise. And they will use multiple of these models. What happens on the data of the organization, that sits always with the organization. The way AI interacts, especially the way or Azure OpenAI interacts or Microsoft Copilots interact, bulk of the querying and the data doesn't go outside of the enterprise. It actually sits in the enterprise domain under their security architecture, under data protection. It's just those queries go and come back into, and we use graphs and different technologies to make sure that the data doesn't leave anywhere. So I think in that scenario, people shouldn't be worried whether using A model or B model will make any difference. It actually helps them to analyze and ingest more information on which they can actually build it. So that's bulk of the AI services are sitting in the data region. So South Africa is a big cloud region. All the AI services are sitting in South Africa. We are actually one of the fewer regions globally which have got GPUs in the country. When you talk about data going out of the country, it doesn't need to, because the way the products are designed, the data always sits with the enterprise.
Okay.
As I said, it's just a query which goes out to the large language model or to the AI service, encrypted, comes back with the answers and gives the user whatever the answers they were rating.
So the same would be true for, say, a Zambian company that kind of pulls from our GPUs in South Africa.
Yeah, Zambian company will use whichever data center they will use.
Yeah.
If they use a data center in South Africa, right, they will use their, so some of that pieces of that information will sit with the enterprise in their own tenant. Doesn't mean that because we don't have a data center in Zambia, the data will sit with the enterprise, but the queries will be done, let's say, in the South African data center. So the data will again sit with the enterprise on their Azure tenant.
Okay. Another term that's kind of, it seems to be growing more popular is Agentic AI. Now that, again, we talked about the evolution of AI. That seems to be the next step to me. What's the Microsoft take on Agentic AI? What's your kind of...
This is definitely the future.
Yeah.
Because as models are being written, large language, small language, different models are coming up every day. One of the things which Agentic AI is doing is actually elevating the sophistication of processing and output which we'll get.
Okay.
Agentic AI actually is the ability to do more sophisticated query, complex querying, rather than simplistic queries. Just to give you an idea, it's actually using different agents which work in combinations with each other, okay, to solve different problems much faster, but correlating with each other. It has much more ability to actually inquire, search, and solve complex pieces which generally can't be solved by just one query or one agent.
Okay.
So you will always have more than one agents which will be used to solve these complex problems. I had a discussion sometime back this morning with an executive where he was asking is how would we get to that last 20% which we're not getting to? I said the answer is Agentic AI.
Okay.
Because with things normal AI, we are able to get to maybe 90% of what you needed to do. But the last 10%, which is more complex, is now where Agentic AI actually can give you. Because originally, it used to be much more expensive and costly and time consuming to get to that last mile. Mm-hmm. This is the solution for that last mile. And the way it works is it's absolutely amazing. Is actually takes the human intervention out of more and more of those things, because it does quite a lot of these things automated. It does a future planning of how it should be doing, and so it remodels itself in a little bit more autonomous way, okay, to solve those problems. And that's a big evolution which we are waiting to happen now as we go in 2025 and beyond.
And without being all kind of science fiction, kind of, how do we ensure that kind of stays within confines, that it doesn't start making decisions that are beyond what we want it to do?
So when we do all these models and we start training the models, we have to train them responsibly.
Yeah,
you have to go down the principles of responsible AI, and make sure that when you're training the model, you follow the guardrails of responsible AI. Mm-hmm. So that's what we are talking about, and we are communicating, we are training every organization. That even if they go during Agentic AI and they create these automated engines, they are done responsibly. So that the people who are responsible, who have access, are doing it correctly so that it doesn't go rogue on an organization also. And I think that's the most important part. The governance and the skill, to build the model and to govern the model, is maybe the future which you're looking at. And hence that's the reason more and more skill is required in an organization to harness this amazing technology which we have.
Yeah, skills is obviously an important part of the conversation. I know there was an announcement today, maybe you can give us a little bit more of what that is and why Microsoft sees that's important. I think it builds on a previous announcement made in the last year. So again, how did the previous year's announcement initiative go? And what's the new announcement and where does that take us next?
Skill in an organization, skill at a grassroots level, and its ability and to apply it is the single most inhibitor for us adopting AI globally. There are two pieces in AI which are important. One is the actual AI skill of how do you model, how do you query, how do you build new models, how do you train models. And the second is security, which goes with it, data security. These two skills are the most important skills. And every organization, every company I go and speak to, every institution, government, skill is what they're looking for. So when we announced it last year, and it was an announcement with yes for youth, and we said we will do 500,000 youth skilling, we realized that that is not enough.
Sure.
And hence you would see various announcements come out. We did an announcement beginning of last year in Morocco. We then made a very recent announcement a couple of months back in Kenya. You heard today the announcement come from South Africa. And these announcements are like 3, 4, 5, 10-fold to the size, because we're realizing that to deliver on our mission to empower every person, every organization on the planet, skill is the biggest differentiator. Good news is we are the youngest continent as far as working population is concerned. Average age is 26. If we can empower youth for this next decade of AI, we will potentially make the whole theory of AI will drive the biggest GDP growth in our continent will be true. Hence, we are trying to make sure the skilling is the highest importance, because the moment people know how to model and how to train the models and use, they'll become better individuals. The organizations will actually do significantly better. So we are expecting this is the start. As you heard Lillian say, this skills initiative has a dream and a deadline of 2026. So which means between today and 2026, which is a year, we are planning to train 1 million people.
Wow.
And I'm not saying it's going to be limited to that. As the year goes, we will unfold more things on academy and how to skill people. And as these products and these stacks of co-pilots are coming in, more and more people will require skilling. So skilling will become maybe one of the biggest constant in South Africa and Africa.
So I've been to the Microsoft offices. It's a finite size. It's very nice offices, but it's a finite size. There's obviously a finite employee base in the country. How are you going to skill 1 million people in a year? Like, I'm assuming you're relying on your partner ecosystem.
So bulk of the skilling is done on digital platforms.
Okay.
So that's the beauty of it. There are lots of partners who are building these skilling initiatives and are partnering with us. Governments, our education institution is, yes, organization is, and they are building these platforms. And these platforms are allowing you to go in, take those courses, skill themselves up right from basic to obviously advanced level. Obviously it goes to data engineering. If they have to take certification, obviously they've got to go and do the prometric testing. But bulk of the skilling is not on site and in classroom. It's on digital platform, because that's what a 26-year-old is used to years in on the start with, and would be comfortable. Skill at your pace, at your own time, in your own organization.
Okay. Ravi, that's been great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All the best.
Thanks. And we're now joined by Pelonomi Moiloa, who is the co-founder and CEO of Lelapa AI. Pelonomi, you were just up on the stage now. You gave an excellent presentation, live demonstration, which is always, I'm sure, a bit nerve-wracking, but it went very well, very well.
Also could have gone very mad, but
It was great. So for those of our viewers who weren't able to attend, just give us an overview of what Lelapa AI is, where it came from, what the use cases are.
All right. So Lelapa AI is an African language technology company. Okay. So we build African language AI that then different companies would utilize to bolster their offerings so that they were able to deal with multilingual problems. So typically the space that we're targeting at the moment is within customer service. So that customer service centers, when you call in, or whether it's a chat service or whatever like that, is able to deal with the multilingual demands of the population, where only 1 out of 10 people speaks Ekisha.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so obviously, I mean, again, you demonstrated it, that some of the people will be phoning in, as you say, speaking English, and then you may not have call center agents who are speaking English but maybe don't speak those languages. So I guess part of the process, if you could just walk us through that, seemed to involve some kind of level of transcription and then kind of retranslation to the call center agent and then retranslating it back to the call center agent of what the issue was. So yeah, please walk us through that and do a better job than I've just done.
Sure. So, I mean, the demo that we showed today was really a demo put together to explain the capability of our solution. Our main focus is on translation and transcription, and there's so many things that you could do with that. So in this case, what we demonstrated was somebody calling into the call center in a language that the agent wasn't comfortable assisting the call center, the caller with. And then what we're able to do is take that language and essentially, even though whatever language is coming in, somebody could speak a different language, and whatever language goes out is the language that person understands. So essentially, you could have two people having a conversation with each other who speak different languages, and they don't have to switch and don't have to understand those languages. And the steps behind that would be first the transcription, so the call would be transcribed. Once it's in text form, you can send it through a translator, which then puts it into the right language. And post that, you could then put it into a text-to-speech model, which would then turn it into voice. So typically what we're seeing in the English market now is that you have models that do that all on their own at once, or you have a black box that actually does that same procedure but does it in the background. So in the demo today, we just broke it down piece by piece to help spark people's imagination about how those different components can be used in different areas of business in order to be able to speak different languages to their different customer bases who require it.
I mean, I think one thing that I thought of it and then you kind of covered it, which is great. I love when that thing happens. But sometimes I've heard people speaking in an African language that I don't understand, and then I'll hear English words, for example, that I do understand. So I know that there's kind of that, people will kind of mix between different languages as they speak.
Yes.
How do you solve that? Like, how does obviously the AIs are kind of capable of working out which languages and which words there, but then, how do you go about resolving it?
It's a very complicated problem, and because it's not a problem that other areas in the world face, other than really the global south, the type of architectures or the type of models that have been developed have not been developed with that in mind. So they actually do really badly at that kind of thing. So at Lelapa, we have a full natural language processing research team, and they are the best people on the continent as far as what we call low resource languages, which then typically means that they're experts at this code switching or code mixing problem. And so in solving this problem, there's a combination of collecting the right data, because if you do have lots more data, many more examples, then a machine can learn from those examples to the point where it can then predict what things should be. But we don't always have that available. So they also need to look at very interesting mechanisms of the architecture of how the model is built, the framework of what it's built, as well as other different types of methods. And we really pull in every direction that we can to try and solve that problem, because it's a really difficult one to solve. But those are the two main areas that we focus on.
So, I mean, I think the demonstration you showed, and perhaps it's for the purposes of demonstration, obviously involved a PC sitting between the customer and the call center agent. Realistically, I mean, there's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Babelfish.
Babelfish, yeah.
There we go. Yeah, so that idea that you can translate to languages automatically and kind of be able to speak.
Yes.
Is this something that you think can become... I mean, I think Samsung does it with their...
I think Meta might have released one like 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So...
Yeah.
So how does what you do and what they're doing, like, would you have to set your models on top of those, or would you kind of sell them into those? Like, what do you see the future for that?
I think this is a great question, because it actually touches something I wanted to cover. We are a model, we build the technology for the language, we build the models. So we don't actually build the applications on top.
Okay.
What we really want to do is enable businesses who are building those applications on top in order to serve them to give aid. So in that case, yes, absolutely. If the device exists, then we would be able to put our models on that device, whether we sell it to the company who's selling the devices or whoever else. We would be able to do that, and then it would be able to do the same thing. And for us, we're really excited about that future that exists, because that's technically where we want to go. Especially being an African startup and having the oral tradition and oral heritage type of history, it doesn't quite make sense that our technology focuses on the text space. So we're quite excited about a future that is driven by voice and voice interaction in our local languages, and that is part of that journey. But of course, we just build the models. So we're also really interested in understanding how we can bolster this ecosystem so that there are different players contributing to it, so we can be the best of what we are in the individual components, but are able to come together to create something like a Bubblefish.
Okay.
With models from us, with hardware from somewhere else, with something else from somebody else, all together. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I think one of the topics that is going to be covered today, and is something that I heard towards the end of last year, was the rise of small language models. Everyone kind of talks around large language models, but obviously I think as AI kind of proliferates and more, it's not one overarching artificial intelligence, but as more companies start to kind of experiment with this, we're going to see more small language models. What's your take on that? What are you where do you see your solution being? Is it a small language model?
Yeah.
Medium language model, I think was mentioned today. Large language model, yeah.
So, actually 2 years ago, I gave a TED talk, and in that TED talk, I talked about little language models. I suppose because I like the alliteration.
Still LLM.
But I think the vocabulary has changed to the small language model lens. And I mean, for us, it just makes absolute sense that models need to be smaller. Firstly, if we ever want them to be smarter, we need to get them onto something smaller so that there's more space for them to be smarter. And secondly, just within the African landscape, it doesn't make sense to have these huge data centers to be able to host these models in order to provide these services. We don't have the electricity. We don't have
The water.
We don't have enough cobalt in the world for everybody to have the type of data centers that the US does. We are very much driven by the idea of resource efficiency, also because we have less data. And we focus on small to medium-sized models because we know they're just more practical to deploy, they're more practical to manage. Smaller models are easier to interpret because you can look inside them and see what's going on, which means you can avoid all sorts of responsibility issues because you're actually being a lot more deliberate about what you're building and how it works. So to us, there's just so many benefits of the small language model, especially for the African context, that we have very little interest in the large ones. And actually, last year we put out the first ever small language generative model that can be fine-tuned for African languages only. So there's Swahili, Hausa, Zulu. I can't remember the last language, but it was our first experimentation into the generative language space, but for small models and purely for African languages. So it's very much up our alley in terms of the direction.
But the 11 official South African models. You're talking about African models. You mentioned Swahili there. So how many African languages have you ticked off, and how many are still on the to-do list?
I mean, African languages are kind of cool in that some of them are similar. So actually in training some models, we give them pieces of other families to help bolster those data sets. So all in all, we've probably touched around 35 African languages, but our focus is on 8. And that 8 covers 520 million people, so almost half the population of the African continent. And it's with South African English, Zulu, Afrikaans, Sesotho for Southern Africa, West Africa, Hausa, Yoruba, African French, and East Africa, Swahili. So that is our major focus in terms of the models that we're trying to get really, really good, because we feel like that will get us the largest impact with the resources that we have.
Pelonomi, it's been fascinating. I hope we get to have a proper sit down with you at some point. But yeah, it's been great meeting you, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
So now I'm joined by Gabriel Malherbe, who is executive from First Technology Digital.
Gabriel, you're a Microsoft partner.
Yes.
And obviously you're perhaps more on the front line than the Microsoft guys. You're seeing things in clients, you're seeing that level of adoption, but they maybe aren't seeing quite as closely as you. So I think let's maybe first ask you, what are you actually seeing? Are companies adopting AI? Where are they adopting it? What kind of use cases are they adopting it? What's your experience?
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you for having me. We see two trends at the moment. We see a lot of vendor product adoption, and especially on the Microsoft stack, given the family of co-pilots that's available. And then on the other side, what we see is where customers are trying to drive some innovation using AI. And that normally means custom developed or fine-tuned AI that they can build either into their own applications, website, the app, or internal facing, for instance, inside teams, where they want to drive efficiencies in human resources or content discovery for the legal departments, etc. So we're seeing a lot of that kind of movement out there in the market.
Okay. I understand that you've done a project using Copilot Stack. What was your experience? Has it been positive? What are the kind of drawbacks? Where were the challenges? What's your general kind of take on how easy it was to use and what it really is, I suppose?
Yeah, for us, it's a really exciting development for Microsoft. It's really showcasing Microsoft's understanding of both product and framework. And Copilot Stack really bridges the gap between those two worlds I've just spoken about, where you've got a Copilot suite of products and you've got on the other side the ability to completely custom develop what you want to do using AI. And the Copilot Stack gives us a framework that includes governance, easy access to data, following Microsoft's vision of a single data source. If you look at, for instance, what's happening in the fabric world, and how organization like ourselves that's got a capability to build product or extend product can actually bring that capability to the Copilot world through extensibility options, which is also offered in the Copilot stack. So for us, it's really been quite visionary of Microsoft of thinking about Copilot as both product and framework moving forward. Yeah.
Okay. And I think there's two kind of trends that I'm picking up, certainly in the AI space. It's more kind of the evolution. One is multimodal.
Yes.
And then the other is agentic AI.
Yes.
So what are your experiences with multimodal? Is that something that companies are actually adopting or is it more kind of text-based that they're kind of looking at? What's your experience with multimodal?
Yeah, very good question. Look, there's a few underlying factors that's driving that at the moment. The one is cost. It's important that we pick an AI model that's fit for purpose and services the business case in a way that makes financial sense. So the ability to live in a multimodal world where certain problems are addressed using one model, for instance, a text-only model where you need simple answers to more simple questions, all the way through to, for instance, a real-time voice model, okay, which you typically want to deploy in a scenario where real-time voice is required. And we definitely see that for cost efficiency and deploying models that's fit for purpose. Agentic AI is quite exciting. It gives us the ability, and it gives our clients the ability to ask the AI to do something in the future. Yeah, and not right there and then real time. And we definitely see a whole host of opportunities being opened by that. Being able to give the AI instructions that it will execute either on a regular basis or at some point in the future.
Okay, and I think that's the thing that these things perhaps are a little bit trends. They're kind of vision, or certainly agentic is setting the direction. Yeah, and I mean, as you've explained, it's something for the future.
Oh.
Are you getting much interest? Are people asking you about agentic, or is it still very much in these kind of corridors of conferences?
We've done a lot of work historically in robotic process automation design.
Okay.
And agentic AI really, for me, is the evolution of where RPA is going to go. The machine acting on behalf of the human independently. So without a doubt, I think the future is very exciting in terms of what agentic AI will ultimately bring to our clients.
And are there, from my simple mind, are there any kind of concerns among people? Because agentic AI seems to be that leap that it not takes humans out of it, but it relies less on human input. So it's that kind of taking the human jaws. Are there concerns about that when you kind of talk to clients?
we see the concerns, I need to be honest with you, but we also find that as we help educate our clients about the capability of AI, and as we also get them to understand better how the technology works, that concern tends to diminish.
Okay.
And I think clients then start looking at it as driving efficiencies, getting better value out of their existing workforce. And for my clients where we've done really advanced work, or where they are at an advanced stage of deploying AI, that's definitely the way that they see the world. It's not reduction of staff, losses of job, but being more efficient, being more productive, doing more business with same number of actual humans. And it's not a concern that we see with clients that ultimately understand the value of the technology.
Okay. Gabriel, that's been great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for the opportunity.
Cool. I'm now joined by Kerissa Varma, who is the Chief Security Advisor for Microsoft Africa. Kerissa, lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you as well, Adrian.
The last time we met was actually in this building for Security Summit, but you were at a different organization.
Oh.
You've moved on. Tell me a bit about your new position and what it involves.
Yeah, sure. So my new role is called Chief Security Advisor for Africa, and it's actually been built up by this program that we're running in Microsoft. It's the biggest cybersecurity transformation program anywhere on the globe. We call it the Secure Futures Initiative,
Okay.
and it's transforming culture inside Microsoft about cybersecurity. We believe that security is job number one for everyone. It's a security above all else, so we put security first. And as part of this, we've hired people around the globe that take the learnings from Microsoft out to our customers. And that may be what are attackers doing? How are we solving novel cybersecurity challenges? And that's my role on the African continent.
Okay. I mean, that sounds very interesting. Perhaps if you would share with our audience some of what you are seeing at the moment, like in terms of what are attackers up to, what are the threats people should be conscious of? Just kind of, I'm sure you could take hours kind of explain it, maybe just at a high level, kind of the top few.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Microsoft sees about 7,000 password attacks a second, Adrian. So you can still see this huge velocity of attacks against passwords. And we're on a massive drive to get everyone to go passwordless, to use MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication takes something you know and something you have and puts it together and makes it harder for an attacker to compromise you. So we're still seeing a lot of password attacks, easy to solve but still very pervasive in the industry. We're also seeing, quite interestingly, over the last year, we've seen that cybersecurity ransomware within Microsoft customers, while we've had a lot of catastrophic impact in industries and things from ransomware, within Microsoft customers, the number of active exploits of ransomware have dropped by 30%. And the reason for that is our technology has actually gotten better at preventing encryption from happening. So that attack phase never happens all the way through. And you would know that ransomware, as an example, takes data, encrypts data, and then holds it hostage. It's almost like a hostage situation. So if you can't get to encryption stage for an attacker, there's no revenue stream coming in. So we're massively being able to disrupt this ecosystem of ransomware by putting in good technology and practices, which has been really great to see. And then, of course, we're also seeing this drive about AI empowering cybersecurity teams across the continent, which is super exciting, and it's why we're here today, actually.
Yeah. Well, as you say, we're here at the AI tour, and obviously there's been a lot of focus on AI. I mean, what are the biggest concerns you think around security with AI?
So the way I think about AI is, like anything new, security practitioners need to understand it. We need to immerse ourselves in it, and we need to educate ourselves. And if I look inside Microsoft, everyone is encouraged to adopt AI, to use AI in our daily lives, because that means we've got more eyes on the product, we've got more people testing it, we've got every part of the ecosystem using it, and that's how we adapt to it. We've got a fundamental practice around trustworthy AI, secure AI, all of our principles around making sure that when you adopt AI, it's done in a responsible manner. Microsoft is creating technology that is changing the world, and with that comes a huge degree of responsibility, and cybersecurity front and center in all of that responsibility, so taking it really seriously.
Okay. And how do you go about securing your own models? internally? Like your own large language models and...
Yeah. So we have, we've got, I mean, I'll give you an example. We've been doing AI red teaming since 2018. And we've learned a lot in this time period. We've built a lot of tools that are brand new because security practitioners now need to think about things like prompt injection. They need to think about, is the response from AI actually what I expected it to give me, which is not typically what your cyber practitioner would usually look at. So we've built some automated tools, which we've now made free to the public. That went out last year. So as we improve our own posture, our own tooling, we understand that it's an ecosystem. It's not just Microsoft that's building technology. Everyone's building technology. And we want to get the safety and transparency out there to everyone. So we've developed tooling that's automated that then we've shared. But also we're very clear that human testing is really still critical because things like cultural nuances, languages, that automation cannot pick up. But if you think about cybersecurity over the last however long it's existed, I mean, I've been in cybersecurity for 21 years, there's always been a degree of human testing and a degree of automated testing. Even standard red testing has had normal testing, which is automated, and then you've got human intelligence on top of that. So when I look at artificial intelligence and making sure that products are secure, I look at it the same way. You need both the automation as well as the human element to test that the output you're getting, that the information that's being used is actually the expected.
Okay. One of the topics that's certainly been kind of high on the agenda, I think, is Agentic AI. Agentic. But yeah, I think that's something that's definitely kind of on the rise. It's probably more of a kind of futuristic vision, I think, at the moment, based on what a couple of the other people have told me. What's your take on that? What are the security concerns around Agentic AI?
Yeah, so I think it unlocks huge potential. And, it's really going to give us productivity that we've never seen before, bring data to our fingertips. And I was actually talking just a few minutes ago to CISOs and saying to them, well, can you imagine adopting agents that can reduce your efforts to get to data and actually give you an advantage over an attacker? My perspective is attackers always have an asymmetrical advantage against defenders. They just need to get one entry point into an organization, and defenders need to defend against the entire ecosystem. We need to protect absolutely everything. What I believe AI and agents will do will bring more data to our fingertips to be able to offset that advantage. I believe it will give defenders the advantage over attackers.
Okay.
And the second thing I look at when I look at Agentic is we've had supply chain risk around in cybersecurity for many, many years. This is not new to us. So agents being built by other people, cybersecurity practitioners have dealt with this forever. It's a new technology, it's a new capability, it will bring with it new novel forms of harm. But if we are forward-facing and we embrace it and we use it and we continuously improve, that's the approach that you need to take. There's a model that's called the economics of cybersecurity. And basically, if you raise the impact of a breach to be more expensive than the value you get out of the breach, it generally deters attackers. So that continuous improvement, the evolution of making sure that these agents are secure, they're robust, that we've got good practices from a supply chain perspective, and we've got robust evaluations, super, super critical for us going forward.
Do you see a future for Agentic AI actually in the defense side of things? That they're kind of picking up things and patching holes more than that exists already?
I could imagine a future where it really does help us. And look, I don't think AI at any point in time is going to do away with cybersecurity skills. I know there's a lot of fear that AI is going to come and take my job and I'm not going to have a job. I think you're always going to need SME expertise because what the AI gets out is based on the data that you feed it as well as the prompt that you give it. And that takes experience, that takes expertise to be able to design that right prompt, to be able to feed it the right data, and then to have the judgment call at the end of the day to press the button to do something. So those are all critical skills. But what I think it will do is it will make cyber practitioners more efficient. So I'm hoping in the future that I would spend less time on the mundane. I get more recommendations out of technology. I'd be able to do more with my time that is thinking, that is logic, that is my expertise, and not on the mundane, just trying to get to the options on the table.
Sure. Kerissa, that's been great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
Cool.